My friends, there have been a lot of chatter about using GitHub Copilot in many different ways, and I have tested it and I've tried to use that since beta version, and I absolutely love that technology. I think that's the technology that provides you the results that are 10 times better than any other technology on the market today. So in this video I will show you a bit how I use GitHub Copilot in my own programming. It's going to be a very simple script, but you will see that I don't have to use any other support, and I get a program quite quickly ongoing. Maybe not a perfect one, but a very good one, something that I could start with. I will also show you a bit of limitations of that technology. In some cases I will show you that it's not generating the programs exactly the way I want it. I have to change those things, which is of course a fantastic news for a programmer, that we are still going to be needed on this planet. But it also shows the fact that not all kinds of requirements can be turned into a working program directly. I'll also show you how GitHub Copilot actually learns from my own coding style. So the suggestions that I'm getting from Copilot they're not only based on GitHub code, but they are based on actually my own program, in the code that I've just written in that particular notebook that I will demonstrate you. So without further ado, please take a look at those a bit longer video, and this is how basically the programming goes. So let's hang on for a short ride. So this is how the GitHub Copilot actually looks like in reality. You could see that by this small icon over here. It actually says that GitHub Copilot is activated. So let me just create a small program that I used in our research to create a bunch of singletons that we wanted to use for checking if embeddings returned by GitHub Copilot are actually of any use for our research. So let's create a new file. In that file, call it singleton generator, and let's just make it a Jupyter notebook. So how it's going to work is that I will take a reference singleton implementation in C++, and then I will look for all kinds of C++ files in my hard drive, and then I will just add those new functions based on the existing code that I have. I mean, just random code, and probably won't even compile, but it's beyond the point. Here I just want to implement how GitHub Copilot actually, to experiment with GitHub Copilot and how it actually works. So let's see the first auto completion. So let's start importing things. For example, import operating system, right? That we could do, and then we're probably going to need some sort of random generator. And let's do set random seed. And you see we already have this first suggestion from Copilot. We can change the parameter, and then we say how many function new methods to generate. So we call it something different. Max functions is say 2. So the singleton we only add 2 new functions. And then say we take the starting for looking for source code to inject. So start for it could be like this. Let's call it, for example, string path code equals, and then we put it something that's on my file. Let me copy that file directly. So I'll just look over here. Perfect. So that should be okay. Compile that. Perfect. Now we're going to need a function that is going to generate the function body for our singleton. So here I will actually try to use singleton, the GitHub Copilot a bit more. So let's write the comment what this function is going to be about. This function will generate a body Okay, so we have this suggestion, generate function, but nothing more basically. Well, actually quite a lot of more, but we don't need that. We need two parameters, function name, which we're going to need, function body, and the index, which function we generate. So, actually that's not a bad suggestion. So we get the signature, definition, blah blah. Yeah, but we're going to use it in C, so the signature is going to be different. We need the void, and then something like that, blah blah, and then not this, maybe not. Function body, that is where we're going to need the opening brackets plus with this plus function body plus closing bracket, and this probably going to need something like that. Perfect. So as you see, the Copilot has generated this function for us quite quickly, although not perfectly, which is something that we cannot really expect. But let's see if it can create a singleton. So this is a reference singleton implementation in C++. Yeah. So it's actually not that bad. It generates things for us that we want to do. But it's not a real singleton, of course, because it has a number of different things that, or it doesn't contain a number of different things that we actually need. So we need also the private constructors and the. So let's copy that from my file singleton, blah blah. Perfect. We probably only need this signature only. We'll take away this one. Not a perfect singleton, but it will do for us, I think, for this particular purpose. Perfect. And that is going to be the beginning. And then the end of the singleton, since we're going to add things in the middle, the signatures of new functions in the middle, they're probably going to need something more. So it's going to be public section again, and here we're going to have singleton, and for that we only need to close the brackets basically, maybe at an empty line. Perfect. Now let's try to find all the files that we actually need for that. So we're going to inject the existing code. So the path code and find all files with CVP extension. Yeah, basically files equals not this, that's too simple, os.path.join root file from 4. Well, that's actually a very good suggestion, exactly what I would need over here. Perfect, and then we'll see what the list files contain. So print, yeah, a nice suggestion. Let's see if we execute it. That's quite many files, so let's just use some of them in the end, right? So let's use only the files that are, say, 200 lines of code more serious files. So now let's filter these files that contain more list files to use. Okay. Well, that actually is a right suggestion, I would say. Blah blah, read lines. Yeah, looks okay. So let's see how many lines that is. Print. Perfect. And of course we need to have an encoding here because the files could be different. So encoding equals just for the sake of it. Okay, 153 files. So as you see, I only changed a few parameters, but most of the code was actually generated by the Copilot. And then let's see, we get random lines from a specific file. So define that function. This function takes random lines from a given file. Perfect. Read lines. Yeah. Okay, sounds similar. So let's accept that suggestion and see where we go. So now let's create this singleton. So for example, let's go through all the files that we want to generate and inject some code. So for over all files and perfect. So for files to use, we do something like that. Okay, we actually have a suggestion already. That's quite many. We probably don't really need that much. So what does it actually say? See about the next suggestion then. Get random lines for a generate function. No, a bit too much. Well, this sounds like a good proposal. So get new lines. Let's start from this. So as you saw, I could iterate over suggestions from GitHub Copilot, which is really cool because you don't have to accept the first one. I could actually get something out of that. So how about this is basically function body that I don't really need. That will be generated in my file. So generate signature and body. So blah blah function name. That will be, let's call it function, just like that. And function body is going to be lines. That's what we want to get. And I is basically this. So that we probably don't need for now. About we just print it. Print the signature and body. Perfect, as you see, it's not that bad. But let's not go through all the files. Let's just go through, say, not all files, but say the first file. 0 or the first 2 files, basically. Let's see what happens. Blah, function lines, function body. Yeah, okay. Then we have to do like this. Join lines. That will make it work. Oh, perfect. Then I see I got some extra functions generated basically over here. I got function with random code inside, exactly what I wanted, right? So now what I could do is I could essentially also take the signature, but this is wrong because those functions are actually named directly. So how about I change that function name plus index plus this should be a string. But if I just use it now, function name should be 0 and 1. Well, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So maybe I should actually save those files to, so those signatures to actually some files. So save these functions to a file. Perfect. Wow, that should actually work. Except that I need to name the file, right? So let's see that file equals test.cpp. Test, that should be test plus string.cpp. Perfect. So I have two of those, and I have two different files with those this logic inside. So that's all it for the demo. As you see, I actually haven't looked at any other source of inspiration, so to say. So no Stack Overflow, no documentation. I relied quite heavily on Copilot for giving me suggestions and making those suggestions work. And I think that's the best way of actually using Copilot. And that's actually a very, very efficient way of working. So within a few minutes, about the quarter, we actually have the entire script generating something from scratch. Of course, I knew what I wanted to generate. But as you see, the technology behind GitHub Copilot is actually really cool. There are cool things that I actually didn't really mention yet. I mean, for example, as you see, when it generated the code, it actually used my naming of variables that I started on. So I only wrote max functions over here, and then it could generate the bodies of the methods out of that quite completely without. So it actually learned how I used code, what kind of variables I use. So it's not only suggestions based on the code it has learned from Copilot, from GitHub. It has also learned my own code, my own style, and can provide suggestions based on my programming style, my naming of variables, which I think is the coolest feature of Copilot. Okay, maybe not the coolest. The coolest is actually that it provides you many suggestions that you could actually do it, that you can accept. And of course that it provides so much more code than just the API suggestions or signatures that you could use from other functions. It actually creates solutions for you. So that's it for this episode. I will come back with some more episodes about what are the dangers of using GitHub Copilot, and maybe even using that for other programming languages, not for Python, because Python is quite important. But it's also a language model it's a language that can be interpreted, not compiled. So let's see in my next episode how it's going to work with C and C++. Thanks, folks.